There was a good result for the Guard in a recent Grand Tournament this weekend. Someone has managed to command a force of Tempestus Scions to place second. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking about an interesting Guard army list, and it's really nice to see the Astra Militarum getting some success. Guard have been struggling a lot throughout 9th edition so far. They really haven't had all that many tournament placings whatsoever, so whenever they do make an appearance in force, it's really quite nice to see. And on top of that, the list that came second today was playing Tempestus Scions, so only using a select few datasheets out of the whole Guard Codex. In this video we'll take a look at the list, talk about a few of the options that are open to it, and try and get to grips with a really interesting example of how Guard can be strong right now. A Lambdan Lions Scion list run by Jonathan Gotel, who used it to take second at the Scottish Takeover 9 GT, a decent sized event with 30 plus players playing over 5 rounds. The list went 4 for 1 over the weekend, the only defeat being an incredibly marginal loss to a Blood Angels list. Otherwise the Scions managed to prove their mettle against quite a lot of different lists, beating out Sisters, Necrons, Orcs spamming loads of Buggies pre-nerf, and a new incarnation of the Tyranids. The list is organised into 2 battalion detachments, and they're both pure Lambdan Lions Scions plus a few regimental auxiliary. Lambdan Lions I've generally felt are probably the best choice for a full Scions army, as they just give a powerful damage buff across your whole force. Their special rule is that just all of their weapons get an extra AP-1 better, so it means that say your hotshot lasguns are all going to be AP-3, plasma guns are going to be AP-4, and it's particularly good for Taurox primes with the Gatling cannons and the hotshot volley guns. It means they spam out really quite a decent amount of firepower with a little bit of AP. The trait can also help them out in combat as well. It also makes any combat weapons that are armed with AP-1. They don't particularly enjoy being in combat if they're tabbed by the enemy, but I suppose it's nice to be able to chip off a few more wounds than you really should have. The list is led by a trio of Tempesta primes, all with command rods so they can issue 2 different orders, and one takes the very nice combination of the refractor field generator and the keys to the armory. They're the other 2 very good reasons to run Lambdan Lions. Their relic is the refractor field generator, and it means that Lambdan Lions get a 5+ invul save when they're within 6 inches of your model. It's quite nice that that's so de-restrictive, that's applicable to the Taurox primes as well as the infantry. Keys to the armory is their Warlord trait. That's a nice simple damage buff one, basically an aura of reroll 1s to hit. As the core keyword hasn't reached the Guard Codex yet, again that works on the Taurox primes as well as the infantry if desired. That one does seem pretty much an auto-include, seeing as you can buy it in for 1 CP with Progeny of Conflict. Why wouldn't you want the buffing part of, say, a Space Marine Captain just for 1 CP? Otherwise, the officers will be great for throwing around all the orders that make the Guard so much more effective, potentially things like reroll 1s to hit for any of the plasma squads to make sure they don't blow themselves up quite as easily. And if they need to bring down any hard targets, then full rerolls to wound against vehicles and monsters and things is really quite good for things like Plasma or Melter. Move certainly isn't going to hurt as well if you need to ping around squads to try and get on objectives or get into enemy table quarters, and they can issue that to themselves if they need to, in a last-ditch efforts if their Scions do die. These guys can either deep strike into battle or jump out of a Taurox prime. I feel like at least one is probably going to be jumping down alongside those Melter squads, though I suppose it could be varied depending on the matchup. Finally, for the HQ section and the actual Warlord, we have a Lord Commissar. I'm presuming he was taken as he can't take any more Tempesta primes, and taking something like a Primaris Psyker might have stopped you from taking Abhor the Witch if you'd needed to. The Lord Commissar is perhaps not going to be doing an awful lot. Scions already have fairly good leadership, but he could make them even better, and potentially he can just sit around farming command points with Grand Strategist, the one that lets you refund command points on a 5+. I guess he might have his highest value contributing to the leadership of the Bulgrin or the Crusaders, who are perhaps more likely to be starting on the board. Moving on, we get into the meat of the list with the troop section, and each of the 12 slots is used up by a 5-man squad of Tempestus Scions, giving you a big 60 obsec bodies on the board, potentially not the easiest to shift in cover with their 4+ armour. The main meaty damage dealers of the list appear to be 8 squads of Plasma Scions. Each Scion squad takes 2 plasma guns and a plasma pistol. They'll be really nasty against any Space Marines or anything relying on 2 wounds or a high armour save. Even just a couple of squads jumping out of a Taurox will kill around 5 or 6 Marines on average, though they might suffer a few casualties. It's pretty handy that they're obsec as well. You could maybe jump out onto an objective, delete something, then make sure that you're holding the objective at the end of the turn. Could be handy for objectives like Stranglehold perhaps. Then there's 2 slightly cheaper Scion squads, each just with 1 grenade launcher, and 2 Scion squads that are just bare bones, no upgrades or anything like that. They maybe could be handy for dropping down and doing actions, things like retrieve Octarius data perhaps. If they do get the chance though, even the hotshot lasguns have the potential to put a nasty sting on some enemy units. For example, I can imagine all that hotshot lasgun fire is going to be pretty handy against, say, Sisters of Battle. Transporting the troops around, there are no less than 5 Taurox primes, each with the Gatling cannons and the hotshot volley guns. These little critters are 120 points each, and they just throw out mass strength 4 firepower. In Lambdan Lions, those Gatling cannons are 20 shots at strength 4 AP-1, and those hotshot volley guns will be 8 shots at strength 4 and AP-3. Just with the sheer weight of the firepower from those 5, they are going to cause some attrition. They'll certainly stack a hefty amount of saves on anything that's toughness 4 or less, but can even punch up against harder things as well. Each prime on average does around about 4 wounds to a toughness 7 vehicle, and it's quite cool that they don't really care about any -1 damage mechanics, so we'll just go through dreadnoughts and orc buggies that bit easier. Finally, to round up the list, there's a few elites choices, 2 squads of 4 Scion command squads, each with 4 melter guns. These very much look like they're just the drop down and kill the target that you need dead unit. I strongly suspect they're going to be dropping alongside one of the Tempestus primes, maybe getting 4v rolls to wound if they need it. 2 squads with that order should stack something like 17 wounds on most normal vehicles on average, so have at least a pretty decent chance of making back their points investment on the turn that they drop in. Finally, there's a couple of really tough units, 5 Bulgarin with 3 slab shields and 2 brute shields. It's kind of interesting to see a fairly unsupported Bulgarin unit. They seem like they'd be a pretty decent choice though if they are going to be one of the ones exposed to enemy fire, maybe nosing onto an objective while the rest of them are in cover, and they're getting some silly high armor saves against the return shooting. Between any cover that they have, 2+ saves from slab shields, and likely take cover to make them even tougher. Maybe could also be a potential target for To the Last as well, if that was the best option secondary wise. Finally, and quite interestingly, there's a unit of 5 Crusaders, who I can see being a pretty cool choice for a durable utility unit. Guard Crusaders, I still believe, get the very old version of Acts of Faith back from the 8th edition indexes, so they get to do some cool shenanigans such as moving or fighting twice or regenerating dead models. They are 16 points each, so they're very pricey for just toughness 3 1 wound infantry, but with a 3+ save and a 4+ invul, they'll be really quite hard to shift in cover, and potentially have the ability to be moving around the board really quite fast with those Acts of Faith, jumping on objectives and things. Again, if they did just absolutely need to survive on an objective for a turn to take it, then take cover could make them really annoying to shift. I'm going to guess that the list plays by hiding as many of the Taurox primes as possible turn 1, hopefully take absolutely no enemy shooting if you go second, and then be prepared to move out fast to the objectives that you need to get to. And the transports can allow some shenanigans with disembarking the units in hard to reach places, and then hopefully counter-attacking with that plasma, making good use of Tempestus orders, and maybe the powerful killing zone stratagem for 1 CP, where you can get a +1 to wound with infantry against one unit that's taken casualties. I would have been quite interested to see what sort of secondaries this list would take, but it appears that the Best Coast Pairings app doesn't appear to have that. It seems like it could be solid enough for things like Stranglehold, Engage on all fronts, and anything action related such as maybe banners or retrieve Octarius data with a bunch of infantry that can get over the board quite quickly. In any case, it's really cool to see an underpowered army like this get quite such a good result, and it's a real credit to the general. Even with a list like this that's about as optimised as Scions get, he's still going to be facing an uphill struggle against a lot of armies. So let me know what you think of the list then. Are Scions the new meta? It'll be interesting to see if any other guard lists start to do well again. Hopefully someone will be able to make good use of those 2+ armor save Lehman Russes. If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, or I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming, with new ones out just about every day. Finally, if you have been enjoying the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics has a Patreon page, and you can find that down in the video description below. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, including seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some really big model kits each month. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.